Well, hello there, gunfighters. Saddle up for another episode of Gunfighter Life, where we talk about guns, gunfighting tactics, ammo, ballistics, use of force, and today a deep dive into philosophy. You guys asked for it when I did a poll, more philosophy stuff. So gather around this virtual campfire, let us be circumspect men and consider some things. If you're listening to a theological episode, then you probably are familiar with the background. So I'll do a super short abbreviated one in case you haven't heard before. By God's grace, I am what I am. By God's grace, I have made it through the things that He's gotten me through and given me the talents that He's given me. All glory be to God. Been a professional gunfighter most of my adult life. Military, law enforcement, private contractor, state rifle and pistol champion, professional big game hunter and guide. By the grace of God. With the time you saved not having to listen to the normal bio, hopefully you'll reach down, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and review. With that, let's get into some philosophy. So, why critical thinking is so important. For the gunfighter, right? There are a lot of people that own guns. This is not gun owner life. This is not gun collector life. This is not gun aficionado life. This is not cool blued steel and wood grip revolver life. Those are beautiful. This is not I have this gun because Fox News tells me it's a good gun. This is gunfighter life. Talking about gunfighting. Gunfighting is a serious business. It's like a 4D chess where you're playing for keeps, and if you lose, you're probably going to die. That's what we're talking about. It's a serious subject. Critical thinking is very crucial to gunfighting, especially crucial to any kind of tactics in gunfighting. I was a urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps, and I've done a lot of instruction for military, law enforcement, civilians, all manner of things, teaching combat, small arms units, tactics, things like that. That is a thinking man's game. There's a lot of geometry. There's a lot of thinking under stress. There is a lot of skill in it, too. There's a lot of marksmanship ability in it, too. But it's a thinking man's game. Don't think of your door-kicking guys running through, buildings as just brute beasts. You certainly need some brutality. You certainly might need to slam somebody down. Know how to fight, know how to grapple, things like that. There is a time for raw physical aggression, and that's important for a warrior, too. But don't think of it as just a brute beast, right? Look at top-level operators, top-level fighting guys. They're smart guys. They're not brute beasts. Or I should say they're not only brute beasts. They got beast mode, right? We got beast mode, but it's important to keep it in check and use it when you need it. And to have control over it, have dominion over it, not let it have dominion over you. It's a big turning point in my life as a man and as a Christian when I realized that I am to have dominion and control over my anger and aggression and not let it have dominion and control over me. To pull it out when it's useful and to keep it in my pocket when it is not. It's still there. You just keep it in your pocket. We're not talking so much today about the geometry and small unit tactics, right? Hasty ambush, react to contact, things like that. We're going to talk about more the way you look at your role, your kit, what you carry, why you carry, when you carry, and not to get too far off the spectrum in either end, but to be circumspect and think logically and critically think about what you carry, why you carry. And I think we can get off in the weeds on both sides of the road here if a lot of people just go with the tactical trend. Whatever the tactical trend is, that's what's going to work. And if you disagree with the mainstream tactical trend, you are wrong. You have guys getting off on the other side of the road where they're like, well, if anybody uses it all, I don't want to use that thing because I don't want to be like everybody else. And I certainly get that. Look, I'm a weird dude. I live as a nomad. I'm not afraid to break out my Bible and read in public. I'm totally fine being weird. I'm totally fine being the weird guy, and I'm fine with being weird. as long as it's for the right reasons. And that's the key. Be strange and buck the trend when it makes sense and when it's for the right reasons, not just to be different. That's fine if you want to be different just to be different, but we're talking about, again, 4D chess playing for keeps. If you're just trying to be different and you settle on something not as good just because it's different, you get shot in the face, that's on you, right? That's maybe not the time to worry about being different. This reminds me of when I was doing some training for some guys. Hopefully I'm not giving too much away. No, but what I actually forgot about this story, and one of my old gunfighting buddies brought it back up to me, and one of the guys was just like, well, I just don't want 9mm because everybody has 9mm. And I said, well, everybody in general, or I don't remember exactly what I said, but the general gist of it was everybody pretty much has 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, and I want those. Right? I'm not going to tear out one of my eyes and be like, well, everybody has 2 eyes. Who wants 2 eyes? Everybody has 2 eyes. So of course I want 2 eyes. I'm supposed to have 2 eyes. It's kind of the default for a reason. So you saying you don't want 9mm just because it's common, that's silly. We're talking about defensive use of a firearm. It's a serious business. Now, if you don't, there are other times where I don't and didn't carry 9mm. But it wasn't because, everybody carries a 9mm, so I don't want a 9mm. Stop with that. That's what I'm talking about, getting too far on the other side. There are plenty of things that I say and that I do that I often don't even recommend because they're unique to me or they buck the tactical trend. For instance, my pistol shooting technique. If you've ever seen any videos, patrons probably have seen more videos or photos or stuff of me shooting or competing or anything like that. I ride both thumbs up on top of the slide of most semi-autos, 1911s, Glock, whatever. Like both my thumbs completely on top of the slide, not on the side of the slide, not on the side of the frame, on the top of the slide, making like a tunnel, like a cage on top of the slide. And my thumbs are literally on top of the slide. That's pretty unique to me. I don't know many other people that do that. I do that for specific reasons, and unless somebody asks and they want to try it, I generally don't even recommend it when I'm teaching, because it's so unique. That said, some people just dismiss it out of hand, which is also bad. Like and when I'm at somebody's training classes, taking their training, unless it's something unsafe, and they say, do it this way, I'll say, okay, and give it a try, right? And chew the meat and spit out the bones. And I've had a lot of people tell me over the years, that'll induce a malfunction, that'll induce a malfunction. I've got thousands of rounds to all kinds of different semi-auto handguns. It works. It may or may not work better or worse for you, but that's an example of bucking the tactical trend. Now, another example is a lot of people say, you can't carry a small revolver with a hammer. It's going to get you killed in the streets. I've been carrying a small revolver with a hammer for a long time, ever since it was my backup gun for LAPD. Doesn't seem like that long ago, but when I think about how long ago that was, it was a while ago. A lot of years. I still prefer, not just all carry, but I prefer small revolvers with a hammer. There have been several occasions where I have wanted that single action trigger pull, where I have taken advantage of that crisper, lighter single action trigger pull. And you can say, you should be good with a double action. I agree. But if you're really good with a double action, you'll be better with a single action. That's how that works. You have to do less movement. You have less influence. The trigger has less influence on the gun because it's less weight, less distance of travel. That's just how that works. So there have been several occasions where I want the single action ability, and people say it's going to get caught on this, it's going to get caught on that. I don't know if people are walking around wearing like ghillie suits or something, but generally I carry in a holster that covers the hammer, and then when I pull it up, it kind of covers it until it gets out of the pocket. Plus I shoot with both thumbs pretty high, and that kind of covers up the hammer anyway. Like the side of my thumb, I guess it's technically possible, but it's not an issue. And I've been carrying a snubby. It's not my general day-to-day carry. It's been a backup gun and then what I call my ultra-light carry for years and years. And I prefer with a hammer. A lot of people in the industry say, carrying a revolver with a hammer, that's just crazy. That'll get you killed in the streets. I prefer revolvers with hammers. I don't like unhammered guns for revolvers. And that's me. I'm not going to say you have to do that or not. But until you don't just say, revolvers with hammers are silly because they're going to get caught on everything. As if like you've got a fishing treble hook duct taped to the side of your gun or something. If you don't want a revolver with a hammer, that's fine. But, it's everybody says is not a valid argument. Everybody says may or may not apply to you. Again, and that's just an example. And I know that I like to be able to leverage that double action or single action. Now, most of the time, double action is probably your go-to, but there are times when you might want a single action. And I like having that option. A lot of people that EDC and carry a folding knife, and a lot of people carry a folding knife in their strong side pocket. Well, I'd say I'm outside the norm on that. I carry a fixed blade in my support side pocket, and the opposite side that my handgun is on. And I have reasons for that. Especially when I started, when I was a commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters, and we were doing a bit of ground fighting and rolling around in full kit, I realized that even if I could get my knife out, like let's say my strong side, somebody's literally on top of me and I can't get my hand to my gun, or we're wrestling over my gun, and the tactical advantage is for me to keep the gun in the holster because I have more control over it there. When it comes out of the holster, it's kind of a harder to keep control of that weapon, so it makes more sense to go to the knife to make space so that I can get away and get the gun while leaving it in the holster. So the knife makes more sense there for those kind of scenarios, and a lot of fights end up on the ground, even when you got a gun. If you think that you're getting a gun so you never have to roll around on the ground, I'd say wrong answer. A lot of fights end up on the ground, whether hand-to-hand or gunfights. A lot of them are ground. So I carry a fixed blade on my support side. So I have a defensive option on both sides of my body if one of them is pinned to the ground. And I noticed when I was doing the training that I might be able to get the folding knife out, because I carried a folding knife for years and years, like many people did. I might be able to get it out, but getting it out, even if it's an auto knife, even if it's like a push button completely open up, if we're wrestling around, I may or may not be able to get that knife and be able to deploy it fast enough, or be able to get to the controls fast enough. A fixed blade is just simpler, which I like simple anyway. It's simple, it's fast, you grab it and go, right? You grab it and stab something soft that's not you until you make space. So I carry a fixed blade knife, EDC, on my support side. And I realize that's not the norm, not the tactical trend. A lot of people are going to carry a folding knife in their pocket, and that's fine. But the point is that I have reasons, articulatable reasons, why I don't go with the trend on that. Many things I do go on the trend. I do stick with the trend. Okay, 9mm is the de facto defensive handgun cartridge of our time. I think for good reason. It's the best balance. I most of the time carry a 9mm. Right now, I am rocking a 9mm. It is the standard for a reason. It has the best balance of power, shootability, and economy of scale. There's reason it's the default. You might not always choose 9mm. There are times when I don't carry a 9mm. There were times as commander of a tactical team where I would carry a single stack 45. Now, for specific things. If I'm at crowded venues where people are literally, if something bad happens, going to stampede like cattle with thousands and thousands of people just shoulder to shoulder running, and there's a adversary that I'm trying to take out, and I may get fleeting shots or a shot. 9mm is good. Round per round, 45 is better. If in that kind of scenario where I may get one or two shots and I may lose in the crowd that person, and I need them to stop doing what they're doing with a round or two in them, that round per round more effectiveness makes sense, critically thinking wise. And before you say, yeah, that's right, 45. Again, that was specific circumstances. My general go-to for that job, STI 2011 double stack 9mm. And it was a large metropolitan area where the commander of a tactical team stopped active shooters. Right, that even the normal day-to-day was crowded. But the normal day-to-day, I still think 9mm was better. Again, think critically about it. And there's something to be said for confidence. Confidence in a platform and a thing is a real thing. But it has to be confidence based on reality. Not like, back-to-back 2 world wars. Like, that gives it some credibility, but that doesn't mean that you're good with it. That doesn't mean that you're better with it. And I go back and and pick on myself here, when I was a police officer, we were issued 40. That was back when 40 was in full swing. Everybody knew you had to have a 40 or bigger. So I went from 40 to 45. And I thought, 45, I had confidence in it. And then I actually started pushing myself and actually shooting against other really good shooters, not cops, like actual really good shooters, competition shooting. And I started shooting on the clock. And I started shooting 9, 40, 45. And I realized that, wow, no, there's no logical way that I can spin this, that the 45 is better in most scenarios. So I switched from 9. And that was back in the day when 9 was not real popular. Everybody thought it wasn't big enough, wasn't bad enough. But just based on the numbers, and I had to look at it if I was going to. And the reason I got into competition shooting, or I did earlier rifle competition shooting, and then I realized if I'm going to get into an actual life or death altercation, as a law enforcement officer, or even as a civilian, it's probably going to be with a handgun. So that's probably what I should start switching my competition to. And looking at it, again, circumspectly, honestly, I realized that, 9mm is better. And for most people, is it always the right answer for you? Am I telling you I have to always carry a 9mm? No, because I don't always carry a 9mm, but I usually do. It's the default for a reason. So if you do have confidence in anything, make sure it's based on actual real world numbers for you, not somebody else said, but for you, right? Go shoot a bill drill with the different calibers. Go shoot a plate rack, or go shoot a Texas Star, or go shoot a common El Prez drill, right, with a 9 versus a 45, and tell me if in a real scenario, which one is actually better for you. Confidence is a good thing, and I would say a crucial thing. Confidence in God, number one, that God has blessed you with the talents and skills and abilities to get through it. Arrogance is a bad thing. Arrogance and confidence are different. But again, don't go down either side of that on the wrong side. Don't say, well, everybody carries a 9, so I want something different. Or likewise, don't say, well, everybody carries a 9, therefore I have to carry 9. And if I carry anything else, I'm silly, because everybody knows 9 is the best all the time. But it's not always the best all the time. It's generally the standard. It's generally my go-to and usually my recommendation. But you may have parameters where for you, the 9 is not better. But do that based on reality, not what you want reality to be. Not what you really, really imagine that it could be, what it is. What is it? That's what I'm talking about on critical thinking in this. Emotions are fine. Emotions are the norm to... Well, let me just say, like a prepubescent girl may have the reason to say, I did it based on emotion, and you might give them a pass. If that's not you, then do it based on logic and reason. On critical thinking. Also, be circumspect on this. This is another thing you got to really apply critical thinking to. And I've been wrong on this in the past. But walk that line being a Luddite, being like just shunning all new technology and just blindly embracing all new technology. Right? Well, people have been using spear gold dots for years and years. They're outdated. 9mm spear gold dot. There's this new whiz bang, ultra lightweight, ultra high velocity, man stopper extraordinaire with a cherry on top round. That's what I'm gonna run. Maybe slow down there, cowboy. Also, you could get way off on the wrong side of that and be like, well, I carry a 45 and 230 grain ball was good enough in WW2, so it's good enough for me. No, you should carry an expanding hollow point round. They're plenty proven at this point. Again, get a proven one. Maybe don't go with an uber new, supposed to be game changer ammo. That makes me skeptical, but you get what I'm saying. Think critically about it. You want a round with some street cred. You also don't want a round that's sold that it's outdated. So here's a real common one to think critically about. True or false? You should carry the ammunition that your local PD carries. True or false? Well, it depends. It's not a true or false question. It's not like, is Jesus the Son of God? True. Boom. Done. Ultimate truth. Are you developed from a monkey? No. False. You were made in the image of God. It's not cut and dry like that. Think critically about should you carry the round that your local PD carries? Well, first, did your local PD make a good informed decision? Right? Because don't assume that they made it based on logic and reason themselves, right? You think that, firearms and ammunition companies don't have salesmen that give deals and cut deals and do this or that, and you don't think that some bureaucrats do stuff to the lowest bidder? I mean, I'm not saying that your local PD does or does not do that. I have no idea, but don't be naive. So, number one, did they make a good choice? Is it even a good choice for them? If it is a good choice for them, is it a good choice for you? Hollow points are velocity based. You don't believe me? Take a hollow point out of your magazine and drop it on the table. It will not expand. It has to be on a certain velocity. Unless you get to some ridiculously long length in a handgun, the longer the barrel, the more velocity you're going to get. So if they're carrying a full-size fighting handgun, which they probably are, and you're carrying some micro 9, why do you think that that's a good choice for you? Is that ammunition even going to expand out of your gun? Maybe, maybe not. Again, critically thinking. So is carrying what your local PD carries on their hip a good idea for you? I don't know. You think critically about it. Don't just, it's not that easy. Right? Your adversary in a gunfight is not going to be like, well, he's got what the local PD carries, so I'm pretty much just going to give up now. Obviously, that hollow point's going to stop me because it's what the PD carries, so I'm just going to roll over. That's just how that works. That's on you, right? So even something that simple, it's not a yes or no. You got to think critically about it for you. Did they make a really good choice, right? Are they carrying Winchester Ranger Ts, which is a really good round out of a Glock 17, and you also carry a Glock 17? Then yeah, maybe that's a good choice. Do they carry 135 grain Hornady Critical Duty Plus P hard cast, which is a good round out of a duty handgun for intermediate barriers and stuff, but you carry a SIG P365 with a little light short barrel? Is that going to, one, cycle and work in your gun? Is it, number two, going to expand? And I don't know the answer to that. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't carry that ammunition or that gun, so I don't know. But you should look into it if you're going to carry that. That was made to be a premium duty law enforcement round, and most of those guys carry full-size fighting handguns. And I encourage you to carry a full-size fighting handgun, but if you don't, then you can pretty much throw that out the window. Maybe it's good ammo, maybe it's not. Maybe you should look into it a little bit more than just saying, oh, well, the local PD carries it. You see how even something that simple is not so simple. Another one, I think, is the it's just as good as fallacy. Well, I'm going to look for some numbers to support what I want to believe, so this is just as good as. You could say, with the average gunfight is under less than 3 yards and less than 3 rounds and less than 3 seconds. So my, 45 long Colt Derringer is good enough for most things. Is it? Is it really? First, you got to figure out how averages work, right? And I'm not here to insult your intelligence, but what did they count in the averages, right? Did they count suicides? Because the distance for a suicide is usually 0 meters. Did they count executions, right? Because the number of rounds for both executions, usually, and suicides is 1. So it was 1 round. If they factor those in, that's going to skew the numbers a little bit. Maybe the actual average of actual, armed opponent versus armed opponent is something different. Maybe it's a longer distance with a lot more rounds. Just as good as fallacy, I'd be wary of that. I sometimes, for ultralight carry a revolver because it's what I can have on me if I'm out doing wind sprints and stuff like that. Generally, day-to-day, I carry a full-size fighting handgun. Now, could I envision some scenario and try and cherry-pick it in my mind and make, this lightweight revolver, because it's honestly way more convenient to carry, is just as good as my M17 with a Trijicon RMR on it? Well, I mean, maybe if some meth addict, pops up, 2 yards away at a gas station, maybe it's just as good for that. Or maybe I'm in some super crowded thing, I don't even know what's going on, and somebody walks up behind me with a high point and puts it on my liver and pulls the trigger with a 40 caliber high point, and it's a moot point, whatever I'm carrying. Some things are just beyond your control. So if I cherry pick scenarios, could this gun be just as good as that gun? Yeah, but don't skew the numbers even in your own head like that. Like, a lot of people, I think, they carry a gun don't ever consider that they might actually have to use it on somebody. And for those kind of people, they're like, well, my LCP or my 22 is just as good because if I draw it, most people don't even have to shoot it. I'm just going to draw it and they're going to crap their pants and the gunfight's going to be over. Is that really what you're counting on? I mean, that'd be great. That's great if that's how that goes down. And in that case, yeah, I guess a replica handgun will be just as good as any STI Staccato 2011. If it's a replica handgun and as soon as you present a gun, the person craps their pants and sucks their thumb and curls up in the fetal position, then that gun, that replica or that airsoft gun with the tip painted black would be just as good as an STI 2011. If that's this, but you don't know that's going to be the scenario, right? If you knew when the gunfight was going to be, you'd probably figure out a way to not be in it. Or you'd probably figure out a way to save other people's lives before it got started, right? So we don't see the future. I don't see the future. So don't paint yourself into this as just as good as fallacy. Is it? Yeah, if you got one guy at 3 yards trying to, well, I guess this would be a bad scenario. Don't go to an ATM late at night if people still use ATMs. But, you know, if there's one guy trying to rob you late at night at a 7-Eleven, at an ATM, and he's feet away, you know, that small revolver may be just fine. But what if it's a more determined adversary? What if it's 3 guys? What if he's right behind you and he's got 2 other guys on the flank and one's partially hidden behind the building? Is that 5-shot Smith & Wesson J-frame just as good in that scenario? I'm going to say no, it's probably not. Think critically about it, right? There's times when, like, if I'm out in the woods doing wind sprints, you know, that sometimes I'll have that super lightweight Scandium 357 Magnum, but because that's just what I'm doing, and that makes the most sense for that scenario. But I'm not going to pretend it's just as good as my full-size fighting handgun. That's why I generally carry a full-size fighting handgun, and I would encourage you to do so as well. And I guess if I can think of a quasi-parallel on the other side of the road on that, it's this thing is better because it's better on paper. Like this, you'll see this, I've seen this before, in people putting extended controls on their gun. And sometimes that makes sense and sometimes that doesn't. Is there even an issue? Can you reach the magazine release consistently without changing your firing grip on the gun? If the answer is yes, you probably don't want an extended magazine release. If the answer is no, you might. But if you don't need it and you put one on there, you may discover, and to many people's chagrin they have in training, and thankfully in training with guys that I've seen, they put like an extended release and it gets either caught up on the holster or in shooting, like it will cause the gun to malfunction. It'll cause the slide to lock back when they're not empty because it interferes with their grip and their gun. So in that case, the actual regular standard stock slide release, magazine release in some cases is just as good as the fancier thing. But that's based on real training and experience and knowing yourself, knowing your weapon. So I guess that would be kind of the inverse of that. Sometimes something is just as good as, and you're just throwing away good money that you could be spending on something else that's more important or germane, or time even. Now, sometimes you have to experiment with that, and you don't know until you know. Sometimes you have to try different things to see if it's going to make you better, but don't be married to something because it's supposedly better on paper if it's actually not. Here's a for instance, and this is not a gunfighting one, it's the first one that popped into my head. I prefer controlled round feed bolt action rifles. I like that big claw extractor for the kind of hunting that I do for spot and stalk hunting. I often live in dangerous game territory, been a professional, guide. I prefer controlled round feed most of the time. Most of the time, I think that a push feed is not just as good as. But here's an example when it is just as good as. For prairie dog hunting, right? For varmint hunting, one, push feeds are generally, most other things being equal, like a similarly priced gun, they're more accurate. So for prairie dog, that makes sense. And if I got to get a double feed while I'm prairie dog hunting, it's really inconsequential to me. It's not a big deal. Right? If I get a double feed when my client just wounded a bison, a buffalo, that's a little bit of a different story. So even there, it's not. Is a controlled round feed or is a push feed just as good as a controlled round feed? Well, that depends. Even for me in hunting, like what am I hunting? Like for some things, like a Savage Axis push feed is super accurate. Yeah, for prairie dog hunting, for me, it's just as good as. So even there, you can get off on the wrong side of the road on both ends. Trying to paint something as just as good as when it's not, or trying to pretend that something's actually better when it's not better in that circumstance, in that scenario, or for you. What I'm saying is the overarching theme is apply critical thinking to you and your scenario. And again, nobody sees the future, but think critically. Think critically before the gunfight, during the gunfight, after the gunfight. Critical thinking applies before the event to hopefully give you the most tactical advantage you can during the event to keep a level head and be able to apply the skills that you have, and post-event for self-diagnostic ability and to articulate what you did and why. But critical thinking is absolutely a gunfighting skill. When I did a survey on the Patreon page, you guys asked for more philosophy. There is a deep philosophy episode that you can think about and hopefully dissect. And I've been wrong on this stuff before. Talking about being a Luddite, I was against, and I advised my guys for way longer than I should have to stay away from red dots on handguns. I thought, no, they're just not rugged enough, they're not robust enough. I have a general distrust of things that take batteries. They've let me down too many times. And to be fair, when those first came out, I was probably right to be skeptical, but I was skeptical way longer than I should have been. Now, after a while, after longer than it should have taken me, I swallowed my pride and actually started training with them. And I had some standard drills that I had been shooting, and I shot after a lot of years and a lot of reps with iron sights, and I shot some after nowhere near as many reps with an optical set on my handgun, and went, wow, yeah, these really are a giant force multiplier and advantage. So I can be wrong on this stuff too, but take a step back and think critically. Again, before the event, for what you're gearing up for, during the event especially, but that's something you actually, I think, need to do in stressful environments. That's not really the scope of this episode, but critical thinking there is absolutely vital. Again, gunfighting is a thinking man's game. Urban warfare is a thinking man's game. Tracking down an animal, stalking an animal, that's a thinking man's game. What makes us the most dangerous, of predators on the planet is our thinking ability. And also after event, like articulating what you did and why, and also self-diagnostic ability, dissecting what you did and why and how to improve. Tactical tip of the day: easy, cheap, and the standard for a long time. Maybe not so much anymore, but it's still really prevalent. The standard for handgun sights is a 3-dot sight system. I think that's garbage. I much prefer a straight black rear sight and a bright front sight. So what you can do for very little money, the easiest way to do that is just take a black Sharpie and black out the 2 dots in the rear of the sight, so you have 1 dot. If you're shooting really fast, trying to clear a Texas Star, running a plate rack, doing Mozambique drills, whatever the case is, that 1 dot is a lot easier to keep track of than several dots, and trying to keep that right in your mind when you're trying to critically think about other things, like, where'd that guy go? Right? So 1 dot. Take Sharpie, or if you want to get crazy, spray some black spray paint in the cap and then get a Q-tip and black out the rear sight. But a Sharpie's easy. If you want to undo it to sell the gun or whatever, you just put some alcohol on it. But black Sharpie, the back of that sight, make it all black. If you want to get a little bit more tactical, you take your front sight and you take some white paint, some white out liquid paper, or just white paint, a matte white, or same thing, spray paint, white spray paint in the cap, and take a Q-tip and just paint that sight white. And then either leave it white if you like it white, or get some of the just most obnoxious, like Dollar Tree, Dollar General, just obnoxiously clown-colored nail polish you can find. Chartreuse, lime green, hot pink, whatever. I'm not telling you to wear it. I'm telling you for your front sight on your gun. and paint that so you have a really high vis, high contrast front sight and a blacked out rear sight. I think that's a better sighting system than the 3-dot. But you think critically for you. If you like the 3-dot, I'm not telling you have to do that, but I think it's a better system than the standard. And I think I have articulated that pretty well. But consider that. That's an easy tactical tip. Blacked out rear sight, obnoxiously bright front sight. Obviously, if you have night sights, you don't want to cover up the tritium. You can still black out the rest of the rear sight, but leave the tritium visible. And your front sight, make sure you don't paint over the tritium if you want the tritium. Tactical verses of the day. I said verses. I'm going to give you 2 because they're on the mind. You shall do no injustice in judgment. In measurements of length, weight, or volume, you shall have honest scales, honest weights, an honest ephah, and an honest hin. Judge righteously and circumspectly. Not just in gunfighting stuff, in life, right? Shall do no injustice in judgment. It's a command. So, not just in gunfighting. This is just how it tied in today for gunfighting, but it should apply for you as a man on a broader spectrum than that. In life, in general, judge righteously. It is also written, you shall not be partial to the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. In righteousness you shall judge your neighbor. Do not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the children of your people. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. That might ring a bell. The second one to discuss is, what do you have that you did not first receive? Again, confidence is different than arrogance. Whatever you have, give the glory to God, because God allowed you to do it. You wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for God. You wouldn't draw a single breath if it wasn't for God. You wouldn't exist if it wasn't for God. Every breath you draw is a gift from God, and it would do us well to remember that more, myself included. It's a gift. Every mile you go in life, every milestone you cross in life, every finish line, every gunfight you survive, that's a gift from God. Not because I am better. I don't think I made it through those things because I'm better than the men that didn't. Because God chose to have mercy on me and have a purpose for me. Even, to be honest, back in the day when I was walking contrary to him and spitting in his face, he still had mercy on me. A loving, wonderful God who loved me so much when I didn't deserve it. He sacrificed himself. He became sin who knew no sin, that I might become the righteousness of God in him. He bore my unrighteousness to rectify me, make me right, to forgive me when I didn't deserve to be forgiven. That's grace. That's beautiful. It's all a gift from God, not earned, not deserved. A gift by very nature is given because of the goodness of the giver. It's a gift. Receive it joyfully. Thanks for listening. Have a blessed day.